We are in a study of the Beatitudes, which was the message conversation that Jesus had on a mountainside with his early followers and his early disciples and crowds that were pressing in around him, from Matthew chapter 5. And we have been looking at the opening statements. This was Jesus telling us something about God that was new, that people had not understood God correctly. And so one of the reasons Jesus came was to give a true portrait in living human, tangible form of what God is truly like. And he was telling us that God, his Father, is the one who loves the poor with a special love and is preparing a rich land for them. He's saying he loves the meek, the humble, and the little ones, and he's going to give them the earth. God loves those who mourn, those who are crying now. He is going to dry their eyes. God loves those who hunger and thirst after justice without getting it, those who suffer unjustly. He is going to satisfy them. He loves the merciful who do not do to those who do not try to get their own back, who do not seek revenge. He will be merciful to them. And this was good news, because these people didn't think that they were included in the God stuff. They thought that you had to be rich, great, and powerful to be blessed and honored by God. Jesus was turning the tables and saying the good news is that God does not just love the rich. God does not just love the great and the powerful, but he loves the one, and not just the ones who experience great joy now and who have the seemingly blessed life now. God loves everyone. And this was the good news. But there's also been a deeper level to these Beatitudes as we've been studying them over the last number of weeks, which are the secrets to the spiritual and the blessed life, in contrast to the way that the world runs itself. And so this morning, we're going to be looking at the fourth of these. We've been looking at blessed are the poor in spirit. We've been looking at those who are blessed who mourn. We've been looking at the blessed are the meek. I think that was last weekend with James. Was that good? I haven't caught that one on the website. You can catch up with all these messages on our website. By the way, our website's great. It's up to date. It tells you information about what's going on in the church, what's coming up. So do check in on our website. James, one shout out from James last week. What did we learn about meekness last week? Were we awake last Sunday? Can anyone remember? Any shout outs? Oh, good God. Strength under control. Very good. Yeah, not always having to have the first foot in, but trusting things over to God. And meekness is a powerful measure of a way to inherit the earth. It's different to the way the world does it. But today we're going to look at blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. I wonder how you would describe your appetite right now for God. I love these words. Oh, can we get through the piano? Ooh. Oh, would someone be able to flick through for me if we can't get the... Thank you. J.N. Darby, who was the founder of the Plymouth Brethren, said, "To be hungry is not enough. I must be really starving to know what is in God's heart towards me." Let me just say that again. To be hungry is not enough. I must be really starving to know what is in God's heart for me. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. A hungering and a thirsting. This week, Anya and I have been over in Poland, enjoying right deep in the forest where we love hanging out in my wife's country in Poland. And I have never seen her so excited about mushroom foraging. And I was introduced to a whole new art form. And so we were going deep into the forest, foraging for mushrooms. And Annie was getting more and more excited. In fact, she filled a whole basket full of these mushrooms. And apparently, she was telling me there are ones that are like Rolls Royces and there are ones like Fords. And you got BMWs and Mercedes in between. And I think there's even a Porsche. And so some of them, and that's all to do with their value and their taste and how, yeah, that's right, yeah. And so we actually found some. So it was amazing. And we were foraging, and she was like an addict. She was like, and because you have to really, really search them, and they're camouflaged, and you got to really, and I'm quite away, my eyes are quite away from the ground. So it's generally a project for the shorter, but I generally found them by accidentally kicking them. And then Annie was like, you've got a Rolls Royce right there. I only know these names in Polish, or learning in Polish. And so, but we were foraging. And I ended up photographing. There are so many amazing types of mushrooms. Some of those are deadly poisonous. So don't take that away as a bore to eat, please, because I would be worried for you. But look at this little fella. I mean, what was God thinking when he created that? It was beautiful. And I was just mesmerized by the beauty of these mushrooms. And the point is not the mushrooms. The point is there was a hunger. There was something in her that got animated about wanting to search for something precious. And there was like a hungering. She got really into it. I was like, I'm really bored now. Can we go? But she's like, no, I'm going to find one more. And it became, there was a passion about it. And I wonder what your faith is like. What's it like to find something that's hidden that you're searching for? I've been reading this amazing little book when I've been away called Rediscovering Christianity Rediscovered by a Catholic missionary from the 1970s who went over to the African continent from the States to really reach the Maasai tribes, who at that point had not really heard about Jesus and about his good news for the world. And in it, he had to realize that how do we communicate? What is essentially our faith? And what is it you would explain to people that have never heard before? And how do you respect and engage? And him and one of his co-partners were trying to find some of the words in Swahili that would try and describe even the word faith. And the best word they could find was inadequate. And it basically meant to agree upon. And one of the Maasai leaders, after they'd been connecting with them for some time and being curious, he was saying, this is a really unsatisfactory word you're using with us. It's like a white hunter with only an eye and a finger on the trigger trying to engage from a distance. He said, if a man is to really believe, it needs to be more like a lion. Have I got a picture of my lion? Oh no, it hasn't come out. Oh no, I've got a picture of a lion. Just imagine a lion. And if a man is to really believe, it needs to be like a lion going after its prey. His nose and his eyes and his ears pick up the prey. His legs give him speed to catch it. All the power of his body is involved in this terrible death leap, and the lion envelopes its prey. This was written in the 1970s. It's probably not very politically correct to be talking about this in Cambridge right now. But anyway, and it envelopes his prey, And this should be how a man believes. This is what faith is like. It's your whole being in pursuit of God. Not like a tepid. So I'm wearing my cords. If you don't mind, my new brown cords. I haven't worn cords since the 90s. My father was a deacon in a very respectable Baptist church in Letchworth. And they all wore brown cords in the 1970s. And they were very staid in their faith. And I do remember the most exciting passion I ever saw was that the deacons in their brown cords would rock in the second song, in the second verse. And you'd get a little sway. And I was like, boy, I can see the passion of their faith coming out right now. Well, I was so excited to find in Poland in a shop some brown cords. So I'm buying some brown cords. I'm redeeming the brown cord. And I told my mother, she said, how could you? We were liberated from brown cords. But maybe your faith has become reserved, has become agreeing with something but not allowing it to really connect, or you to really connect with it at a more passionate level. But Jesus said, if you want to pursue me, you must hunger and thirst. Jan, I should imagine there were some moments on your pilgrimage where you were hungry and thirsting. There were some times when you were like, I am ready for my bed. I'm ready for a rest. I'm ready for dinner. I'm ready for some food. And to hunger and thirst. J.N. Darby then went on to say, when the prodigal son in Jesus' parable that some of you may know about, when he was hungry, he went to feed upon husks in a pig field. He did what he could do. But when he was starving, he turned to his father. Let me tell you that again. When the prodigal son was hungry, he went to feed him upon husks in a pig's field. It wasn't bad enough. He hadn't got to the bottom yet. He wasn't hungry and starving enough for something else. But when he was starving, he turned to his father. And he began to find, this son in the field of pigs began to realize the place of his poverty of spirit. He began to realize he'd had everything, but actually he had nothing. And he began to mourn for what he remembered home was really like with his father. And there's a mourning in us for something of Eden, for something how things originally should have been that we no longer have. And the person in the Beatitudes is a person that's beginning to realize their poverty and of spirit, and in comparison to the goodness of God, is being to think, I am poor. I need God. And then there's a mourning that I'm living outside of home. And I want to return home to God. And Jesus began to describe that pursuit as being like those that do hunger and thirst. What for? For righteousness. Now, what is righteousness? Righteousness is more than just a certain moral state to a certain point. This kind of righteousness that Jesus is talking about, what's the mushroom? What's the prey that I'm talking about here? It's righteousness that we are looking for. And this righteousness, I want to describe to you in a couple of moments what it is and what it's like. Firstly, it's a desire, I think, to be free from sin, the power of sin, and the pollution of it, and the desire of it in our lives. So when you are looking for something, when you're hungering for something, just a cheap Kentucky Fried Chicken meal isn't going to do it. It's like I am turning my back on KFC and I am going to the, summer house. No, what's the Midsummer's? I've been out of Cambridge for too long. Midsummer's house. That is what I want. That is where I'm going. And so I turn my back on KFC and I march towards Midsummer Common because I know that's what I want. No point going to KFC if I want that. And so I turn myself that direction and I run towards and turn my back on. And we have these glimpses of what we're really like sometimes that show up in different scenarios when I realize how broken I am and how in need of something so much more than what I've got. I was playing a game of Monopoly with Anya when we were away, and she defeated me humiliatingly to the point where she said, do you want to declare yourself bankrupt? And I said, yes, I need to accept defeat. But I found all these emotions coming up in me where I was beginning, in my defeat, I found myself really unpleasant. I began to get really defensive and agitated and quite angry that she was like fleecing me from all my money. She was absolutely having to take some of my properties because I couldn't have enough cash to pay her. She was taking, and there was something reacted in me. And actually, I became quite unpleasant at the table. It was the two of us on a romantic holiday together. And I was like, the next morning, I was lying in bed that night. I was like, God, I didn't know I was like that. What was it touching in me? And I had to reflect that night. And the next morning, I was like, Anya, I'm so sorry that you had to end the game early for your own safety. And I was like, God, I don't want to be that kind of person that I showed up in that game of Monopoly like. It drew stuff out of me. And I was like, Anya, how would you want me to have been in that situation? She said, well, just calm, just treat it like it was a game. No, this was not a game last night. I was pitted against you and how good you are and these kind of things. And so suddenly we're filled and overridden with this driving need of almost a fear sometimes that feeds this self-concern. We have this need for self-assertion, pride, boasting, bringing conversation back to me all the time, self-protection at the cost of others, personally and national protectionism that we're even seeing in our world right now. It comes from this self-centered drive that is not how God designed us to live by. This sensitiveness that's touchy, reactive, unpleasant, sometimes intimidating, always imagining people are against you, a need to glorify yourself, to rule and conquer at any, Monopoly board, to rule and conquer at any price. That wasn't my wife, by the way. That was just if you play Monopoly. And a need to be right and have my way, and the need to have the final word. Whew, that's a powerful one. I've got to end this conversation with the final. What I think is right. I must have my final word, my final say. This, folks, destroys relationships, tensions, and breakdowns, and it's the total opposite of what righteousness is really meant to be like and what we've been drawn to. The person here in the Beatitudes is recognizing the poverty of this and mourns for something that is more than this. And in the Beatitudes, we have a switching point to this, where blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. All the Beatitudes so far have been about thank you. When you look inside yourself, and it's been, there's poverty, I'm mourning. But this is now recognizing that I'm in that pigsty and this is not satisfying me. There is something more. And it has to come from somewhere outside of myself. And that's why hungry and thirsting, you hunger and thirst because you haven't got the energy inside you to keep going. You need to fuel yourself from outside. Now, our bodies are comfortable with that. In our psychology, in our humanity, we're not comfortable with that because I don't need anyone to help me. I am it. I am self-sufficient. I am self-made. Look at my empire. I made this. I don't need anyone coming in, and I don't need to admit my weakness and my need. That's weakness. No, it's the beginning of a filling. It's the beginning for more. And actually, the man or woman of the Beatitudes is someone that's learning to say, I need something from the outside that I haven't got and I have not yet experienced, and there's more. And a willingness and a humility to acknowledge that. And this is the gateway into the kingdom. And it says, and this switching point is this need of something that I have not got of myself that I need. What's this mushroom? What's the prey? What's this righteousness that I'm seeking? It's this. It's not a righteousness ultimately of our own doing or our own actions or our own standards that we're meeting or other people's expectations that we're meeting. This is a righteousness that is about being transformed into the very image of Christ's likeness. I think I might have a slide on this. This righteousness ultimately means becoming like Jesus. Jesus is the very picture, the very portrait of what righteousness looks like in flesh and in action. And I'd love to read, if I may, just a couple of words from this missionary, Vincent Donovan, when he was explaining to a people that this was very new to, about what this was about. Now, this is the news that I bring. The word has gone out over all the earth, and I believe it, that in the man called Jesus from the town of Nazareth in the country of Jews, God has told us what he is like and has showed us who and what he is. The word is that Jesus is the answer to your questions and mine. For a few short years, which seem like only a few seconds in the life of any man or any people, Jesus pulled aside the dark, heavy clouds that hide God from us, and for one brief, shining moment showed us a glimpse of God, showed us what God is like and what he is like and how he feels. The God that Jesus tells us of and shows us is so different from the God we had imagined with our own minds, and it takes our breath away. What does Jesus tell us and show us about God? First, he tells us that God is not one who lives far from us, one who sees all the evil in the world and just passes by. Jesus tells us that evil is not from God. He does not make evil, and he hates evil. He fights against evil. He wants to destroy evil and wipe it out, not just for one or two people, but for all the people of the world, and not just for one day or 1 year, but for always. Jesus shows us that God is affected by the suffering of even one human being. He is so touched with mercy at the sight of sufferings that he wants to wipe out this suffering, not by sitting far off and working an occasional miracle, but by coming among us, sharing our life with us, suffering with us every sorrow we have ever known, so that he might wipe out suffering completely. And this is what he began to create. God has no arms, no hands, no legs, no body. He is like breath, like the wind, invisible. So how can he become visible in the midst of all the things that he created? How can he know what suffering is? How can he feel merciful towards our suffering? How can he share it? If God wants to be visible, to appear in the midst of creation, there is only one thing he can do. He must take on human flesh. He would have to create human flesh in his own image and likeness. Oh, that's what he did. He made man in his own image and likeness to walk the earth, to subdue the earth and to save it. This is what Jesus has shown us, not only about God, but about man, how man should originally have been, how man was originally created to be. Paul calls Jesus the second Adam. The first Adam screwed up, and we are living under that. But Jesus is the second Adam who's come to recreate what humanity was always meant to be and what it was meant to look like. And Jesus was not just to us the portrait of what God is like to us. He's the portrait to us of what a human being should, can, and be like. Wow. Oh, thank you. Rob, I'm so glad you came today. This is what Jesus has shown us, not only about God, but about man. Man is not the playing or the plaything of the universe. Man is not just like a spluttering for a few moments, then fizzling out, darkness before and after. Man is not the plaything of the universe, not a thing to be teased with happiness and crushed with sorrow, a thing without meaning among the many things of the earth. Man is God appearing in the universe, appearing visible in the midst of all he created. That changes the meaning of man, doesn't it? Doesn't it put value back to man? But also, Jesus came to restore back what humanity originally was to be like. And so, suppose the fullness of time had come and the work of God was perfect, and there appeared a man who was perfectly a man according to the plan of God, a man completely human. If once upon a time there was such a man who was so completely a man, so perfectly human, then there would be no other way to describe him as to say, this man is God appearing in the universe. Isn't this so? Jesus was that man. Jesus is the image of the invisible God. But Jesus is the image of who you and I are able to come to be like. Those that do hunger and thirst for righteousness shall be filled. And this is the good news of the gospel, that we are going to be filled as we come with openness. On that first opening day about being poor in the Spirit, I had a cup and I had to remember a glass and a jug, and the jug needed to be emptied in order that it could be filled. And do you know, the gospel, the good news of Jesus is about saying, Lord, I am wonderfully and beautifully made, but I know that I'm incomplete without you. I am carrying this sin, this darkness, this self-centeredness that I recognize I was never created with. And I've shunned you and your creation and everything that you are about. And I want to give my life back to you, Jesus.